We ourselves don't know whether Pani Puri attracts GST or not. It is a food item. 3,659 lakh crore transaction as part of the UPI. Even though there is a price rise, the government has not increased the My dear friends, recently I saw news where Pani Puri vendor is taxed under the GST. My dear friends, the Pani Puri vendor didn't even know that he is eligible for the GST until he received a notice from the department. This notice was received from CGST department to a Pani Puri vendor in Tamil Nadu. In fact, the notice of the department reads as follows. It says, Office of the State Tax Officer summons to appear in person and to produce document. It is said that issued under the provisions of Section 70 of the Tamil Nadu Goods and Service Tax Act 2017 and Central Goods and Service Tax Act 2017. It clearly says, whereas based on the reports received from the Regressive and PhonePe, you have received UPI payments for outward supply of goods/services after the payments received for the years 2021-22, 22-23 and 23-24. And they said it is exceeding 40 lakhs. The question here comes, how will the Pani Puri vendor, micro entrepreneur or a Pani Puri vendors will know that they have to register under the GST? Take for example, some people sell tender coconuts on the streets. They take payments in the UPI. Their turnover may even cross 40 lakhs because the tender coconut price compared to Pani Puri would be higher. And accordingly, their turnover would exceed 40 lakhs. The question comes, how will micro entrepreneur file their GST returns? How will micro entrepreneur know that they are liable for GST? They started using UPI because there is a convenience of transaction. My dear friends, accordingly, when the UPI transaction has increased, it is because of micro entrepreneurs that this transaction has increased. If micro entrepreneurs have collected this much payment, micro entrepreneurs are not aware that the GST is applicable to them. How will they know? As per the GST, they have to register. Today, suddenly, they receive a notice from the GST department. In this case, it is said that the GST department, that is Central GST, has issued summons to appear to explain how he has received 40 lakhs total turnover based on UPI record. So the question that comes, he was not even certain about what is the GST position or GST rate that he has to collect from the customer. When he has received 40 lakhs as part of his bank account, the through UPI or PhonePe, he will definitely not know what percentage of tax to be collected from the ultimate consumer. He would not have taken input tax credit on the inputs that he has purchased, for which he would have paid GST. He would not have collected GST thinking that his turnover would not exceed 40 lakhs. So there are issues for the micro entrepreneur. Government has to support this transition period, bring awareness about the GST applicability on them or exempt them from the GST. Here, when a Pani Puri vendor is receiving a GST, we ourselves don't know whether Pani Puri attracts GST or not. It is a food item. We don't know whether 5% is applicable, 12% is applicable, 18% is applicable, 28% is applicable, because even as an experts in the GST space, GST law, we have to go and refer HSN code to check whether for that particular product GST is applicable or not. We ourselves are not sure what percentage will apply for micro entrepreneurs who are selling on the platforms, selling many items, whether GST is applicable for them or not. Here's a scenario that the department has issued GST notice to a Pani Puri vendor. It is a starting point of regressive approach and aggressive approach by the GST department. Taking into account 3,659 lakh crore transaction as part of the UPI, most of the UPI payments would have been received by micro entrepreneurs like kirana shop or by food vendor or a street vendor. They would have received collection. Today's scenario, because of the price rise that has occurred in India post 2017 after introduction of GST, definitely most of the street vendors' turnover would have exceeded 40 lakhs. Even though there is a price rise, the government has not increased the threshold limit for registration. Here is a constraint for most of the micro entrepreneurs where they are going to receive notices from the department just because the turnover is exceeding 40 lakh. The question here is whether the issuing of notice under this scenario will increase the revenue for the department is the next question. There are many cases in the GST. People are issuing fake invoices and trying to evade taxes for crores of rupees. They are not issued notice under the GST in most of the scenario. But people who do micro business or micro entrepreneurs who are selling food items on the platforms are issued notices, and this is going to clearly lead to harassment of the GST assessees or even micro entrepreneurs who are surviving for mere livelihood, who are just doing business for livelihood alone. So government has to bring tax stability and certainty with respect to micro entrepreneurs. UPI transaction should be used only for incentivizing them for the purpose of credit taxes through bank loans. But with respect to GST, issuing demand notices or summoning them will cause harassment and also ensure that they will be put for tremendous pressure because they have not collected the GST at all. Neither they took input tax credit. They cannot be brought under the malafide intention under section 74 of the CGST Act or the SGST Act, as the case may be. So there is no malafide intention at all because they are not aware of the law. So the question here comes whether GST registration is mandatory if the UPI transaction crosses 40 lakh or if a micro entrepreneur reaches 40 lakhs. The registration is compulsory. The position of law today, the registration is compulsory if the turnover exceeds 40 lakhs in case of goods. In case of services, if the turnover exceeds 20 lakh, then GST is squarely applicable and accordingly, GST demand notice can be issued. However, the micro entrepreneurs who are just doing business for livelihood, when they are not even aware of this position of law as provided under the GST Act, it has to be proactively looked by the government to support them, either to see how the awareness need to be brought or to ensure that these kind of notices are not issued to the micro entrepreneurs. The sole reason why the government is now targeting UPI transaction is because of the sheer volume of UPI transaction which has consistently increased from 2017 to 18. Today, the total UPI transaction in the entire country, the total transaction is 3,659 lakh crore, which the government is trying to tax. So accordingly, this hardship faced by the assessee or the micro entrepreneur has to be seriously looked by the government, ensure that they are provided awareness on the position of law. If you see under the GST Act, Section 24 provides for compulsory registration in certain cases. If you see Section 24, it says notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1 of Section 22, the following categories of persons shall be required to be registered under this Act. Those persons making any interstate taxable supply, casual taxable persons making taxable supply, like that they have provided about totally 12 scenarios where there is a requirement of registration. So, to summarize, micro entrepreneurs getting notice under the GST just because they have exceeded 40 lakh UPI transaction is definitely an alarming sign where this is a regressive and aggressive approach by the department, because that micro entrepreneur would not have availed input tax credit, neither he would have registered at the GST, suddenly he receives GST notice, and if the interest and penalties levied on him, definitely is going to suffer. Government has to bring more awareness to the street vendors or the people who are doing micro business. Either they should be exempted or they should be provided awareness, or the government should take steps to make them get registered under the GST and bring them awareness about what product attracts what percentage based on harmonized system of nomenclature. This awareness cannot be brought in India for a sheer volume of transaction by the street vendors and micro entrepreneurs. The awareness of the GST may not be there for all the people in the country, starting from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. UPI transaction would have been a boon for micro entrepreneurs, but now it is becoming a bane because they are receiving GST notices. We feel really pity because they neither collected GST from the ultimate consumer, neither they took input tax credit, but they are receiving notices for demand. We have to see how the government is going to address the issues of the micro entrepreneurs when they are going to receive notices. In the first place, micro entrepreneurs should not receive GST notice because they were not even aware of the position of law of the GST. Thank you.